Field Yates of ESPN.com had access to all of the official NFL Management Council salary cap numbers. Somebody gave those to him yesterday. He posted them on Twitter. And the team with the lowest amount of cap space, and in all the years I've been doing this, Chris, I've never seen a team with this little cap space. The Kansas City Chiefs currently have $177. Now, before we go any farther, for those of you watching on TV, you'll see the Texans listed at the top with $49.2 million. Keep in mind, and this was pointed out by Aaron Wilson of the Houston Chronicle, the Houston Texans number is inflated because they got a bunch of deals that haven't officially been done yet. That number is going to plummet when some of the deals that haven't been signed, or there hasn't been a physical, or they haven't otherwise hit the cap. That number will drop. But for the Chiefs, it's not dropping. It can't drop. 177, Chris, that is as tight, as I said, as any team I've ever seen pressed against the salary cap.
Yeah, no, it really is. I mean, I think, we've seen some teams maybe, dabble in the negatives for a day or two, a few days here and there. But, these are common problems. You can't do it for very long.
No,
you can't do it for very long.
You got to settle up. You got to settle up at the end of the day. I'm not aware of being able to be in the negatives. You've got to be on the right side of the cap at the end of the day. You can be negative throughout the day, but by 4 p.m. Eastern, you got to be on the right side of the cap, or there is. I don't know what the consequence is because I don't think anybody's ever done that.
I don't think anybody's ever done it either. No, I was more referring to like before the league year starts, right. Things like that. You see the numbers and the negatives and everything like that. But hey, these are problems that, the wealthy have. When you're wealthy, you're about to put a huge diamond ring on your ring finger, your championship ring finger. There's a lot of good players on that football team. I mean, it's not a shock. I mean, we've seen this happen to the Seattle Seahawks. We saw the Denver Broncos have problems with the cap after they won the Super Bowl. You have superstar players, free agents become in demand. And of course, the elephant in the room is they have a quarterback that we all know is going to be the highest paid player in the history of the sport, and they don't have a lot of wiggle room. And the biggest thing, I think, Mike, with any of this, and what we always see, other than the New England Patriots, everybody else does this, is they hold on to players of their Super Bowl teams too long. They can't cut the cord. Oh, that was a special team. Ooh, that was a special group in the locker room. So people keep that lifeline alive a little bit longer. Now, I don't know who the casualties should be in Kansas City. I've got a few names we'll discuss here in a minute. But, when you look at who's being paid, other than this one guy, a.k.a. Sammy Watkins, everybody else is, a huge contributor to the football team as far as the guys that are making major money and a knock to the salary cap.
Well, and before we get to Watkins, there is an easy way to take some of the bigger contracts and create cap space. Frank Clark, for example, he's got a $19.3 million cap number. They can take his $12 million salary, and let's just say they take $10 million of it and leave him with a $2 million salary. They can spread the $10 million over the next 4 years, $2.5 million per year, and they create $7.5 million in cap space now. So they can do that in a heartbeat. They can do that in a second, and it doesn't affect Frank Clark at all. It gets him all of his money now, or at least it guarantees all of it now, and I think it may already be guaranteed anyway, so it's no big deal if he's willing to do it. Sometimes guys aren't willing to do it, but if Clark is willing to do it, they can create $7.5 million in 2020 cap space with the stroke of a pen. There are other guys who fall into that same category. Tyrann Mathieu' deal could be restructured. You've got guys like Eric Fisher. You've got guys like Travis Kelce. Now, some guys will have to be extended because we've got several players like Mathieu and Fisher and Kelce who have only 2 years left on their deal, so you don't have multiple years to spread that number out and get the lowest possible cap number now. So that can be done, and they can easily create cap space there, but that's kicking the can, and you have to account for those dollars in the future. Well,
exactly.
Sammy Watkins has a $21 million cap number, $14 million base salary this year. If they trade him or if they cut him, that $14 million goes away forever, Chris, and that's why he continues to be in jeopardy.
Yes, it's really odd, really, to this point that we haven't heard much rumors or talks about it or anything. I don't know. Do they want to try to restructure a guy like Sammy Watkins, extend his contract to then maybe lessen the number? He is talented. We know that. We saw that in the playoffs. We saw that in the Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, the best ability is availability, everybody always says. And Sammy Watkins is not available a lot, hasn't been available a lot during his time in Kansas City, and hasn't produced the numbers and the effect on opposing defenses that I would imagine they want. let alone, Mike, they got a guy in the wings and McCole Hardman who's similar in theory, who's a guy that can catch a slant and take it 50 yards or beat somebody deep for a 70-yard bomb down the sideline, whatever it may be. So there's wiggle room. And I'm not saying McCole Hardman, Sammy Watkins yet. He has a little work to do there. But the Sammy Watkins thing is the biggest one you look at as far as players that could be a cap casualty that would make a lot of sense and you understand it. But I think there's probably reluctance because the offense got them to the Super Bowl. It's special. That's why they won the Super Bowl. Sammy made a big play down the sideline. And it's hard to cut that cord to go, okay, let's find somebody else new when you know you just had a proven commodity Super Bowl winner.
Yeah, Sammy made a big play and a smart play where he had seen Davante Adams in the NFC Championship game, how he got by Richard Sherman on a deep route, and Sammy Watkins did the same thing in a key moment and generated a big gain. Watkins, when he signed his contract, Chris, remember, we had this debate a couple of years ago comparing Watkins' contract to Odell Beckham's contract. My argument was, and I think I brought you around on this, Watkins has a better contract because it was only 3 years, and it was from scratch. There was none of this new money stuff. It was a free agent contract. They paid him a ton of money, and what they've gotten out of it is 519 receiving yards in 2018, which doesn't justify $14 million for 2020, and they got 673 yards out of him for 2019. That doesn't justify $14 million for 2020. I mean, something's going to happen with Watkins, and I think for now, Chris, they're going to wait to see. My guess would be at this stage of the season, the offseason, let's see what happens in the draft. Let's see if there's a team that's got its eyes on a CD Lamb or a Jerry Jeudy and doesn't get him. Maybe going into the second day of the draft, there's a willingness to do something. And maybe Sammy Watkins takes less money or renegotiates, gets a longer-term deal and still has $14 million this year. But, he gets less in future years. There's something I think that could happen, almost like the Randy Moss trade of 2007 that brought him from the Raiders to the Patriots. That happened during the draft. This feels like the kind of trade that can happen during the draft. Or they get through the draft, they haven't traded him, and they just say, see you later, Sammy Watkins.
Yeah, they very easily could do that. Or, they're sitting there at 32 and a receiver that they valued and looked at and go, ooh, we thought this was the first or second best receiver in the draft, and here he is available to us at 32. Maybe they take him, so there's a lot of options here. You're right. I think they're going to let this play out. It's going to be the long play for sure. But I don't think there's going to be a huge You're right. If anybody trades for Sammy Watkins, there's not going to be like a huge market. There's not going to get a huge, be able to command huge draft picks and assets that way, especially with the injury history and the production that you just mentioned. It's underwhelming. But the big thing is there is still talent. And I think that's probably what Kansas City sees. And that's probably why they're not going to, if it does come to a trade, just sell him down the river for nothing. Because all you got to do is look at the guy when he is healthy. The AFC Championship game, the Super Bowl. He made game-changing plays. He's got game-changing ability. And, when he is healthy, that's why he was a top 10 pick. Now, he hasn't lived up to that. But it's a tough decision for Kansas City. It really is, because this offense has made this team go. And, of course, you want to support Mahomes with weapons.
Now, what the Chiefs are doing, they are taking full advantage of the rights they have under Sammy Watkins' contract to squat on him at a time when, if he had been on the open market 2 weeks ago, he may have landed somewhere and gotten a nice payday, and he may get thrust back onto the open market after refusing to take a pay cut, maybe as we get closer to the season. And I'm mentioning all this because yesterday you and I agreed that the Panthers screwed Cam Newton by holding him as long as they did. How do we feel about the Chiefs exercising their rights here with Sammy Watkins to keep him on the payroll, knowing that none of this is guaranteed? There's no trigger in there that forces them to move him by a certain date, and every contract needs to have those in every year to prevent this kind of thing from happening. But the Chiefs are acting within their rights, and it could be that Sammy Watkins ends up getting screwed on this, Chris.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt. But, I do think it's different than the Cam Newton situation. First off, Cam Newton was like the face of that franchise for the last 9 years. He was an MVP, brought them to the Super Bowl. He's done a lot of good things in the community. Not to say Sammy Watkins isn't great in the community and a great guy, but you just mentioned, he doesn't have the same leverage or, roots in the city, but certainly doesn't have the same leverage as a Cam Newton to complain when we just talk about he's being paid like he's one of the best receivers in football. But yet the production has been below the middle class of football at the wide receiver position. So from that standpoint alone, he needs to be grateful to the Kansas City Chiefs for that too, to go, okay, hey, man, you gave me money. You've given me a lot of money. I haven't produced for you. I'm willing to sit here and let you figure things out to where maybe I come back and make that money. Maybe we make another deal and keep moving forward, or maybe I get traded. I just think it's a little different as far as the Cam Newton situation.
You know, it's funny. I don't know where the line is, but I agree with you. Cam Newton is on one side of it where I think they kept him longer than they should have. With Sammy Watkins, they're fully within their rights, the Chiefs are, to keep him. And fortunately, we don't have to make a tougher call for somebody who is closer to that line of what is and what isn't right when it comes to a team operating within its rights under the contract that the player signed. If Watkins gets traded, where do you want to see him? You're always looking for more targets for Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. Is that a guy you'd like to see wearing green and gold?
That would be one of the teams right towards the top of the list. No question. You know, again, like I love Devontae Adams. I like Lazard, the other big receiver, but he's like a number 3. They need another guy, in my opinion, if they want to keep up with the San Francisco 49ers of the world. Again, if they get into the playoffs and have to get in some sort of shootout. You know, I don't think they were capable of playing those games unless it was a bad defense. So, yes, Watkins to Green Bay, Watkins to Philadelphia, I think can make a lot of sense. You know, again, I'll just go back to our combine conversation with Howie Roseman. He talked about all they wanted to do is, support Carson Wentz, but they have their cap issues too. And I don't think they've been able to make the moves or find the support or weapons for Carson Wentz yet either. I mean, I know they got the draft too, but that would be another place I would look at for sure.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.